Welcome to another episode of F and I've Got a Brain Injury. My name's Ken, and I'm here with Jesse.
The idea of this podcast was to have a podcast for people with brain injuries, for people with family members who have brain injuries, for people who want to learn more about brain injuries. And I wanted to let it be known that me and Ken, the hosts, have brain injuries. So I apologize for my voice, and I also apologize for Ken's face. Thank God you can't see it. He has a face for radio.
I have a face that would make a freight train take a dirt road.
So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and enjoy. Hello and welcome to Fuck It, I Have a Brain Injury. I'm Jesse. I'm here with Ken, and we're interviewing today Dr. Kate Gould, a neuropsychologist from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. Hi, Kate. How are you doing?
Good, Jesse. Hello. Thanks for having me. And hello, Ken, too.
Good to have you on.
My pleasure.
Do you like dealing with kids or adults, more or less?
So I work with adults, and I've been in training as a psychologist first and then a neuropsychologist. So specializing in conditions that affect the brain and behavior and emotions and thinking. So I like working with adults in the community. So in the long-term rehabilitation space, people with traumatic brain injuries from car accidents mostly, or falls, and strokes as well, but any kind of condition that affects the brain and thinking.
Did you start off with kids when you first got into it? Like that seems to like what they do here.
I think it's a little bit different in training in Australia. So when we're doing our training, we have a rotation and we do have to work at a setting with kids and a setting with adults and set different sorts of populations to build up our skill set.
Right.
And I have worked with kids as well in the past, but I really find most of my work is with adults these days.
Kate, so what is like the medical definition of a neuropsychologist?
So that's a really great question. A lot of the time people haven't heard of a neuropsychologist, and that's probably a good thing if you don't have to come into contact with one of us. Usually we're there when there's been a problem with some sort of issue with the brain, a neurological problem. And a neuropsychologist is really interested in that relationship between the brain function and the brain structure and how that plays out in everyday life. So a lot of neuropsychologists are involved in assessment and diagnosis of conditions affecting the brain. So that includes things like intellectual difficulties, problems relating to thinking and behavior in childhood, so autism and ADHD, problems affecting memory and old age, like dementias, and how something like a brain injury could affect your thinking skills. What are your strengths in your thinking? What are areas of difficulty? And then coming up with recommendations or supporting intervention and rehab to help people after they've experienced something that affects their brain. So it's a bit different to a clinical psychologist who might be more focused in the general community, working with people who have anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. Neuropsychologists still do all of that, work with emotion issues, but particularly when it's interrelated with something that's also affected their brain.
So you don't write scripts and things like that?
No, so I'm not a medical doctor.
Right.
I get the title doctor from having completed a doctorate in psychology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kenneth,
Um,
Kenneth's disappointed about that.
No,
oh,
not at all. The reason I bring that up is actually about 2 weeks ago that one of my medications I called trazodone that I was on, I didn't realize that it was a depressant or antidepressant. And when you come off of that, I was wondering what was wrong with me. I wasn't sleeping or anything, and that was why. Made a big difference. I didn't realize that, and now I'm just not taking it anymore. I talked to the doctor and I said, just get me off of it.
yeah, it can be so disruptive to start or stop or change
Right?
medication. So it's good you spoke to your doctor and made a plan for how to get off of it safely.
I'd never realized how bad it was until I was off of it.
Yeah,
Really interrupted my sleep.
yeah, I hear.
Hey, how do you assess like different types of TBIs? Like, do you do a brain scan and see which person is affected in what part of the brain? And also, like, what part of the brains are like have different effects on people, you know?
Yeah, so when neuropsychology first really started, it was before there were CT scans and MRI brain scans. So the job of the neuropsychologist was to do different tests of thinking, and then knowing what we understood about which parts of the brain help us do certain tasks based on what the person was having difficulty with, we then figure out which part of the brain was damaged. But now, since we do have brain scans that can show us a picture of what's actually happening in the brain, that role for neuropsychology has changed. So for myself, it wouldn't a neuropsychologist wouldn't be the one ordering or running or interpreting the scans, but certainly it's something that we have an interest in, and we study about just getting a basic understanding of how to make sure or try to pull together all the pieces of like a jigsaw puzzle to work out what's going on for a person. So now, sorry, yeah, go on,
No,
Jesse.
I was gonna say I do something called neurofeedback for my TBI,
Mm-hmm.
and what they start with doing is doing a brain scan and seeing what areas need like the most help, and they do that for they try to concentrate on those areas. But what I found is that I do a lot better when they just concentrate on the general what's called the CZFZ spots, but it's like the control center, and I find that I just get better when they just concentrate on that. And I was thinking maybe it's because of the how the brain is so plastic or plasticity in the brain.
Mm. I think one of the other things that we're really appreciating more and more is that it is about what parts of the brain do what things, but it's also about how connected the brain is, from
Mhm.
front to back, from left to right, from up to down. And so the brain works as a system. And when you're improving certain parts of the system, that can also have flow-on effects to other parts.
Yeah, it can rework itself basically.
To an extent, yeah,
Yep.
they do find that. So I think the brain is just forever kind of really complex and fascinating, and something that it's really interesting, Jesse, what you're saying, that is really important. It's what you're noticing that's the most valuable aspect is how is it all the therapy and all those programs, like how does it actually change how you're thinking and feeling, and what you're able to do is ultimately what matters more than what we see in a picture on a scan later down the track. That's really interesting, but it's about with anything that we're doing, how does that improve your everyday life that matters
Right.
the most?
Can
For
can I
me, my major problem is aphasia.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak fairly well, but numbers, I just can't do numbers at all. Adding, subtracting, forget about it.
Mm. So you haven't found that there's any of these sort of programs that have helped you with that?
Not really. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten better over time, but it's very slow.
Mhm.
Physically, I think I'm not going anywhere, but mentally, I seem like I'm getting better.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Can I jump in with some of the description of what Kate's role is as a neuropsychologist? I want to say, Kate, your approach, while you recognize the importance of assessment, as a neuropsychologist, you're a little bit unique in that you focus on practical intervention. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and how your work does that?
Yeah. So, as I said, neuropsychologists can focus on assessment, diagnosis, rehab. I personally focus on rehab in community practice. So I'm working with people who are probably like you, Jesse and Ken, like several years down the track,
Right.
and work with them, people in the really long term. And it's less about the diagnosis at that point, and it's more about helping people with everyday life to build up their strengths and build up their skills while compensating for or addressing the challenges that they have. So I do that in my private practice. And then I also, as you mentioned, I'm a senior research fellow at Monash University. So I do research on these topics as well. And I have a particular interest in helping people who've experienced changes to their behavior, or who are experiencing vulnerability to cybercrime. That's my
Right.
other area.
In the cybercrime, that actually, do you deal mostly with people that are getting bamboozled, for more or less, that are losing money, or is it more towards the I don't know how else to basically say it, that are looking for love per se?
Well, it's kind of both of those things, because I think everyone in the world is being approached by cyber scammers on a
Right.
daily or weekly basis. In fact, research is suggesting that a quarter of the world has been scammed now.
Wow.
Well,
So this is an issue affecting everyone, and globally it's $1 trillion a year at least. And it's now the number one or number two crime in most countries. So everyone is vulnerable to cyber scams, and there's a scam for everyone.
Right.
I think there are some conditions and circumstances that do make people more vulnerable at specific times of their life. And I think that having a brain injury or other kind of major injury or trauma can make us a little bit more lonely, a bit more bored, a little bit more keen for some excitement.
And that's where the
And
problems can come into play, right there.
exactly. So the scammers are very good at preying on vulnerability, and they're actually looking for people who are more vulnerable. They've said that. So whether it's some amazing product or service, or scaring people with something that might be wrong on their computer or they might get in trouble for, or an opportunity to help others, which I think is probably one of the big ones for people after an injury. They're on the receiving end of help so much that it can be a really nice opportunity to feel wanted and that they can help others. But I think you also hit the nail on the head, Ken. It's the romance and the friendship scams that we're seeing as a really big problem, because the scammers are offering something that people want and understandably need: connection and companionship and love and romance and
Right.
hope and excitement. And so the scammers play people for a long time, and they say very loving and kind things like, I don't care you have a brain injury, I love you just the way you are. And that really resonates with people. And then they might even send small gifts to make
That's
it seem like they're real. And then they start asking for money for all sorts of things, like my mother's sick, or I need money for airplane tickets to come and see you. And people by that point, they're really convinced, and their emotions have taken over, and they can't see the red flags anymore. And it can be very obvious to people on the outside and seem like, how could you fall for such a thing? But
right.
the scammers are so good at what they do, and they manipulate people and they make them trust them
That
until,
makes
yeah, till they,
Reminds me of
that Lewis.
one of
That
the people that we deal with is Lewis, and he's had some problems with that. And once you go down that road, it's hard to stop. It really is.
Exactly. And that's what I experienced, that I was working with one of my clients in the community who I'd been supporting for a long time. His name is Colin, and he was in a romance scam. And I tried everything to get him to recognize that this romance was a scam and to stop spending time online. But the kind of the veil was over his eyes,
Right.
and there was nothing I could do to really fully convince him. And so that's where we started a project together. And I know you probably hear a lot about projects working with Melissa.
Yep.
And we started a project to learn about scams together and to try to teach other people about them, even though he was a bit 50-50 as to whether what he was going through was real or not. And that was a huge a huge kind of shift, really, ultimately over time, that he started to shift from being an unknown victim to being a scam survivor, and then to becoming an advocate and teaching others about scam safety. And so, yeah, this was 10 years ago, and Colin and I have been growing this project in that time, and now have a whole research and clinical program that is helping people avoid being scammed, helping people become aware of their own vulnerabilities. We have a measure. And also we now have a therapy program, a group 10-session program that we're piloting to help people disengage from being scammed once the kind of hooks are in.
Do you think it might have something to do with confidence? That when you're first getting going at it again, you're just not confident?
Yeah, I think people are probably feeling really rusty
Right.
about getting back into dating. But some people weren't even seeking a relationship at all. They might have been on a shopping website or an online games website. It's not just on dating sites that the scammers try romance scam. They'll find any way. So you're not really suspecting it. You're not thinking about what do I want or what's a safe way to do this. But I think it is hard for everyone, sort of knowing what's real and what's not when you're
Right.
online. And it's hard. I think that's a really good point. It's hard to get sort of back into the game. So these romance scammers make it very easy. They do something called love bombing, where they very soon just start to say how much they love you and how beautiful you are. And they say things like, I bet my dog would love you, and things to manipulate you. So you don't have to do any work. It just all kind of comes very easily.
And you never even see the person.
No,
It's all
that's right.
online. Wow.
Yeah. So the scary thing is that now with AI, they can make photos and videos of anything, but also because these are organized criminals that have massive 1,000 people staffing in a building. And they have $1 trillion a year budget as a industry. They just pay
Unbelievable.
they pay models. If you need a video call to prove someone's real, they'll just have a model that they have to do a short video with you live. So it can even be a real person now, but it's all part of the scam. It's part of their machinery.
Scary
It's
sometimes.
It's absolutely shocking. And unfortunately, the people that are in these call centers that are running these scams, they're often victims of human trafficking as well.
Right.
So they will get them shut down and return people to their country, and then the next day they'll just open up again with more staffing, and it's very, very difficult to stop. So it's like, I feel like it's a bit of this like worldwide siege that we're under, this war, but we're sort of not aware of what's going on and how much money and stress and distress we're suffering. So I think it's about everyone having a great awareness and being a bit more cautious
Right.
on the web and on the phone and on the text message. Yeah.
And if there's people who are interested, either providers or family members of people with traumatic brain injury, they can get information about your program where, and we'll link it to our to all of our
Yeah.
stuff too, but where would be the best place to reach you for that information?
So Colin came up with a great name for this program. It's called CyberAbility. So we've got the ABI in ability, and it's about rather than, being too scared to be on the internet, it's about how to do that safely. So we have a website, cyberability.org, O-R-G. And yeah, if you can put the link in, that would be great. And that has all of our resources for free.
And I like the name of your podcast too. It's actually pretty good. I've seen a
Thank
couple
you.
of them, yes.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Relentless Optimism, and that one is focused on the work I've been doing on helping people who experience changes to their behavior after injury. We did a big trial of an approach that is a project Melissa Caper is involved in as well,
Right.
from Tim Feeney and Mark Ilvasaka's work on positive behaviour support. So we've got this approach we've just sort of relabeled PBS Plus, and we did a big trial of this behaviour approach that's really about, rather than just focusing on reducing behaviours that have become a challenge, it's about helping people learn the skills they need to build a meaningful life.
Right.
And addressing the problems like behaviour that get in the way. And so this podcast it relates to a big trial we did of this program, and we interview people with brain injury, their family members, and their clinicians who are part of this trial, and they each talk about a different aspect of the approach and how that's helped them with having the life that they want.
And how many seasons have there been so far?
Well, we're really slow to put it together. So there's one
You have
season.
no idea.
I appreciate how much work goes into putting a podcast
Right.
together and getting it out the door. So we have one season that's up there, and Melissa's interviewed in one of our episodes about projects, and also the work Melissa did in reviewing recordings of the sessions and giving us feedback. And then we're currently recording a second season, and that season's a little bit different. It's now about my work to take this approach to services and clinicians and teach them how to do this. And so I'm interviewing the different services that are using this approach, and we're exploring what that's like. So we've done some episodes in from these trips to Canada and America I've been doing, and other services across Australia as well so far. And when it's all ready, then I'll release the whole season in one go.
That's some good work you're doing. It really is.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Yeah, I agree. I actually I listened to a few episodes myself, and I really related to the first episode where you spoke about how in the beginning people can either be like very reserved or very what's the word?
Uninhibited.
Uninhibited. And from and I relate to that a lot, because I remember when I first had my injury, I was so uninhibited, and well, I loved it. I loved it. I was so happy I was uninhibited. It was like, because I always used to be a bit shy, or I would think of a joke, but I wouldn't actually say it out loud. And when I had my injury, every joke I would think of, I would just let it out, and it was funny, and people were laughing. And I remember, I also, whenever I was in like a stretcher, when they take me to around the hospital, I would grab out to people and say and say hi to everyone, everyone.
You sure that wasn't the drugs you were on?
And I don't think so. I don't think so, because another thing is that when I was moved to a nursing home, when they were moving me in the stretcher, there was like a security guard up front. So I said very loudly, I threw my hands up, and I said, "I give up." And the security guard just looked at me and like laughed, because I don't know what else you're gonna do.
You just didn't have that filter.
But yeah, and I honestly I would make jokes and like nurses would scorn me for it, but then I'd hear them down the hallway laughing at it and joking about it. And yeah, I honestly I loved it. I love being uninhibited. But now I realize I transitioned and I'm kind of not that way anymore. And I'm more like a dynamic, and that I don't like. I really do not like this the dynamic aspect of brain injury.
I think that's such an important perspective you share, Jesse, that what might be seen as inappropriate by other people might be something you really value.
Hmm.
And being kind of freed from that kind of shyness and introversion to actually share your jokes, a lot of jokes, and maybe some that other people didn't appreciate and
Right.
some that they did.
Yes.
Like it's not that behaviors are all good or all bad, and it's about what, your experience of it that's so important as well. And when we started our research over 10 years ago in this space, there had been no research onto what people with ABI felt about their behavior. It was always asked about other people, the doctors, the therapists, the family members, and what, problems or issues or their understanding. But I think, yeah, when you talk to people themselves, they're very aware often about the changes. And I think it's important to see that there's some positives that you got out from it as well, that you were speaking up and sharing your jokes and
I
instead of
just wish
keeping
it
them with
stayed
you.
with me. I wish it stayed with me, the uninhibitedness.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, it's
I mean, although I don't have a filter, when I was uninhibited, I knew when to not go too far. So it was kind of like pretty on the edge, but safe, you know?
mm.
So
It sounds like you had a confidence.
Right.
yes, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Or you didn't
Or
worry as
lack
much.
of self-awareness or lack of self-awareness.
Yeah. And I
Self-awareness
guess there's
of
a fine
self-care.
line between, yeah, between that, um, lack of self-awareness, but enough awareness to kind of go, I'm enjoying this. This isn't
Right.
how I
Mhm.
usually am. And this is pretty fun. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that's helpful for people to hear.
Yeah.
Well, that's what our whole podcast is about. Eventually, with you just gotta say, you just gotta say, screw it. You got a life to live, and we're hoping to make other people realize that there's more to life than just sitting at home. I feel I got better after I did move out of my family, out of my parents' house. That's when I really flourished.
Mhm.
Mm, it can be that big kind of jump in like
Right,
just
exactly.
having to do it on your own. Yeah.
Burning yourself on the stove for the first time, things like that. That's how you learn.
Yeah. I think absolutely like things can be people can be so protected from something bad happening that they don't actually get to experience figuring it out, trying it, making mistakes,
Right,
learning, and building up confidence from having figured it out. And
right.
Mm.
yeah.
I do also want to talk about your podcast again, because I felt there were a lot of similarities to a program I was in. I don't think everyone agrees with it, but NPRS, it's called NPRS. It was neuropsychological rehab services, and it I think it was pretty much very people got out of it what they put into it, and it wasn't for everyone, but it was very like they did stuff like yours, like individualized things. Like they had posters up for everyone. Everyone had a different poster. We had a meeting in the morning where everyone who had a brain injury sat together and they kind of learned from each other, as well as having the staff in there as well. And then there was time for like to do like cognitive exercises and whatnot. but I really I felt when I was listening to your podcast that it had similarities, like a few similarities to the program that I think, Ken, you were in this program too.
I like the structure it gave me when I first got up.
Big thing too.
It was the structure completely for me.
Yeah.
Getting out of the bed at the same time.
Yeah. And that's another thing with TBI is routine and structure are just like so needed. You need a routine. And when you don't have one, it's like, well, I often go without a routine. I'm a little all over the place a lot, but
at least you admit it now.
Huh?
At least you admit it now.
Yeah, but recently, now that I have a job, I have to have my routine, so
Right.
I'm more structured and everything. But
Yeah, I think
they also had a sign on there when you walked in that read, "Structure breeds calm." And I feel like for TBI people that rings true, because when you have structure and your routine, you kind of like know, don't need to wonder what you're doing, and you gotta have you know who you are, you know what you're doing and whatnot.
yeah, absolutely. I think routine takes away a lot of small decisions
Right.
to leave your brain open for the big stuff. It's like how most of us already have a lot of routines already around, like when we brush our teeth, what order we have our shower, and all of those things are things then you don't have to make extra decisions about. And I think that becomes even more important after a brain injury to have some structure and routine, so you know what each day is likely to look or each week. So I think the program you're talking about was based on Yehuda Ben Yishai's work, and it's a day program.
It was, yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like there might be some very similar kind of aspects. The program we were doing was based individually in people's homes. They didn't come to a center. We would go to their house or other place that was suitable for us to meet, and we're working with them, with their families or their workplace, and delivering the intervention in their community.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
do you
may be
have
the similar
TBI
approach.
in where you're from? The TBI community be able to take rides and things like that, like we do? Because a lot of states do not have that.
McWaver?
Yes.
Hmm.
Is there
So,
a TBI waiver there?
so in Australia, I think it might work a bit differently. If you've had a car accident in the state I live in Victoria, we have an insurance scheme that covers all your therapy costs for the rest of your life, essentially, that are related to your injury.
Fantastic.
So we're really lucky, and they fund a lot of our research as well. So they funded that big trial that we did to evaluate this program. They're very interested in research that helps people with brain injury, that helps people with behavior issues, and they've funded work my research group led by Professor Jenny Ponsford has done in tracking people's long-term progress. We're tracking a few thousand people. We're up to 30 years. So every year for the first few years, and then every 5 years they do like surveys. And so we've got some amazing data of what those pathways look like for people in the long term. But I think in Australia, it varies state by state what people get access to.
Right. I think for most people after a stroke is purpose, a reason to get up, whether it's work, anything like that. It's very important for me.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, I guess, where we start with our PBS Plus intervention is like, what is your purpose? What's the meaning? Like, what's your why? Why should you get up in the morning? And if there isn't something, then that's where we start. Like, how do we help you find that thing that matters to you? It's not about what other people want for your life. It's, as you said, Ken, it's your life. It's your life to live. So let's help you find that. And that might be what the program is about for you, finding the reason to get up in the morning.
And start living it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And let's look at what's getting in the way of you living that life, and how
Right.
can we all help you to to work through that, because it might be things related to your injury, but it might be things related to your environment or the people around you as well. Maybe they're not on the same page. Maybe we can bring everyone together and help get everyone on the same page about you living that life, and how our theory is that the more you're having a good life, the life that you want, a meaningful life with structure and routine, with purpose, with people around you that understand you and support you, the less likely there's going to be issues with behavior.
Right.
And so, yeah, so far we're seeing that in general, that's how things are playing out. We're seeing as we're helping people achieve the things that we want, the behaviors are going down. The things they want, sorry. Yeah.
It's good to know that it's working, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're feeling that the approach is really being valued by people with brain injury, by families, and by clinicians as well. So therapists really like working in this way. It feels very in line with the kind of clinician they want to be. They got into this work to help people, and it
Right.
feels very authentic. Yeah.
Hey, can I ask, what might you say to um, critics of this approach that would say, well, after brain injury, you need to demonstrate a certain set of competencies or skills in this setting before we can help you in, a more real world setting? I mean, maybe you already answered that by saying people are liking this. The clinicians like it better this way. The people with brain injury like it better this way, and we're seeing results in that it's resulting in reduced challenging behavior out in the community. But there is an old-fashioned view of this kind of work that says, well, they're not ready for that.
So they're not ready to live in the community, do you mean?
That yeah, and they're just not ready to be practicing these things out in the stores or out in a work setting or something like that.
Yeah, I guess this work has come from America, and then Tim has brought and Mark have brought it to Australia. And I feel like in Australia we haven't had that as the kind of traditional approach. So
Okay.
it's probably more a perspective of an American, I think, to answer that question, because I guess I'm not an expert on what the model is that you're describing as the
Okay.
alternative.
That's
Yeah, it's a
wonderful.
it's an interesting question. Yeah, I think it's like that train in place model.
Yeah.
You're going to practice things you're going to do in a work setting. But I don't think I'm against, having some lead up and building up skills to doing things, because you want to set people up for success. You don't want to throw people in the deep end and set them up to fail
Right. Yep.
as well. So I just think it's very individual to what specific task, activity, setting, skill that you're talking about. And I think we are still grading things and taking steps towards more challenging things. Um, but I think you're negotiating that and working that out together, rather than a service imposing what you are and aren't allowed to do in your life in this setting before you're allowed to do it somewhere else. I don't think we take that approach. I think it's more like, how are we going to set you up for success? What are the steps you're going to need to figure out? So, if your big deal is, Tim has this lovely example of someone who wants to be a doctor after their TBI. They want to train as a doctor. It's like, okay, what are the steps you're going to need to do to get there? And there might be 1,000 steps.
And a lot, and
And
$1,000 and the money.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of money. That
Right.
might be one of the steps, is having the
Yep.
funds to pay for the training. But maybe one of the earliest steps is getting out of bed in the morning and getting dressed and eating your breakfast. And like, you've got to be able to do that if you're going to go to study.
Start there.
Yeah, so you're building up all of those steps. It's not like, okay, day one, sign you up to a medical program, but building that way, and learning as you go, like what's working, what's not working. Is this still the goal? And, it took many, many years, and it was a roundabout way. And Tim describes that eventually, after many years, this man became a paramedic. And so it was an amazing outcome.
Right.
By going step by step and doing that together, I think is important. That's part of the rehab, is figuring that out. What do I need to do? Like, and getting that help for, I guess, when an injury might have resulted in frontal lobe decision making being affected, having someone else to help you with that is part of the rehab. It's part of the journey to help you, support you to think things through, rather than other people just taking over and making all the decisions for you. Sometimes there are situations for safety that happens, but the rehab is when you're helping someone build up their skills in, managing challenges and problem solving, and that's what we have to do every day in our lives.
The hardest thing for me now is still accepting the help. That's a hard one to get the hang of. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people don't like to feel dependent on others and want to do things for themselves. So one of the concepts we talk about is helpful help versus unhelpful help.
Right.
Because everyone in the model, all the different models, all the different approaches, every family member, every clinician usually is trying to be helpful. But whether that help is very helpful in the end, or sometimes it can be unhelpful, is something to kind of explore. And I really like that kind of way of exploring things, because I feel like it's respectful to the fact that everyone's trying to do their best and help out. But ultimately, Ken, your view, and Jesse, your view, and other people with TBI, their view is also so crucial. If it doesn't feel helpful, if it feels like it's working against you, then that's likely to lead to problems in those relationships or the way things are going. So it's it's about finding a way that is that helpful help, and working out, can you hold back on that unhelpful help and find something else?
And it's different for everyone, right?
Exactly. So that's why, I don't think it's about saying this is the right approach and this is a wrong approach. It's about having the person with the injury driving it, and other people there to help guide and help explore and set things up or put it into practice, and figuring that out together. It's very individualized, which it's just hard. It takes more time. It takes a strong relationship. It takes people having skills and knowledge and that clinical expertise to do that. And sometimes for clinicians, that can also be really hard to hand over that level of control to the person, when maybe many clinicians are used to being the ones in charge and making those decisions. And also for the person with the injury to accept control. Like Ken, you said, it's hard to accept help. Some people, it's the other way. They don't want to take the reins. They're used to other people having the responsibility. So it can be a real shift in the way things are working.
And the one thing that I have learned is medical doctors you have to have, I don't think they know a whole lot about brain injury. I really don't.
No. Mm-mm.
They've been
Yeah,
wrong in everything they've said about me, more or less.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of experts out there, but there aren't enough experts to go around.
Right.
And there's a lot of the kind of general medical practitioners that don't have a good understanding. And that's something that I hope improves. I hope there's more education and awareness. I feel like TBI, for such a high prevalence condition, doesn't have great PR in the community and in the medical profession for some reason.
There's some things you can't learn in a book.
Yes.
More or less.
Which is why I think it's incredible having a podcast like you do that puts the real stories in a way that's really accessible to the broader community and the medical community as well, to hear what it's like and what works, what doesn't work from your perspectives.
And a lot of things that I find that do work haven't been evaluated enough to be able to get paid for insurance and stuff like that. So it's like all out of your pocket just because the research isn't long enough or whatnot.
Yeah, I think that is such an important point. And that's why we did our program and of research, is because it's been something that many people have been finding helpful for decades, and Tim and Mark have done some great research, but to do a big trial hadn't been done yet. And so we're very lucky to get the funding to do that, because research is very expensive to do, but it's what's needed.
And very important it is, for sure.
What are the things, Jesse? Do you have some examples of things you think have been helpful but haven't had that evaluation?
Well, yeah, like I said, the neurofeedback that I'm doing. I also use a photo modulation helmet or something. Like infrared lights, like go into my, I don't know, it's crazy, but mainly it's the neurofeedback. Like, I almost cried one day when I first started it, like, because I would constantly be going back and forth in my house, wanting to get something, forgetting this and forgetting that. And after doing my neurofeedback for about 2 weeks, I remembered something, and I I was so happy with myself because I remembered to grab that before I go to the kitchen. And it was just, I said, this, I think this is helping.
But what happens if you don't do it for a week or 2 weeks? Do you feel the difference?
I think I do think that there are issues, like if you stop for a while, it it does like regress, but if you do it consistently or somewhat consistently, like I remember I did it 2 days ago and today, before our meeting today. So I do feel it has. I'm sorry, can you repeat
It has meaning to
that?
you is really what matters most.
Yeah, well, yeah,
And it sounds like you're really at the cutting edge of these new approaches and technologies, which is really cool. And are these research trials that you're taking part in?
no,
So
that's
he
not.
pays for it.
I pay for it.
Okay.
If I were to do the research, I would have to pay for it even with the research, and it'd be a lot more just to be in those
Yeah,
trials. But no, I'm not.
it's really interesting. I'm going to look more into it after this chat.
Neurofeedback, yeah, definitely helped me a lot.
And it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Kate Gould.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jesse. I've loved being on your podcast. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
enjoy your time here.
Thank you for listening to F It, I Have a Brain Injury. I'm Jesse, and this is Ken.
And I hope you all get something out of this podcast.
We would love to hear your stories too. See you next time.
See you next time.